Welcome to the 3 Knockdown Rule. Starring Mario Lopez and Steve Kim. Presented by Hustler Casino.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 3 Knockdown Rule is in effect, brought to you by Hustler Casino. I'm Steve Kim, joined by Mario Lombardi Trophy Lopez. Philly.
I was just in Philly, too, so that was kind of cool. Thank you, Kimster. More on that big game a little later. Quick shout-out to Smoking Tim Frazier and
Tino on the edits. All right, the bout sheet for this show. Big updates on Canelo Alvarez, brought to you by Turkey Outlaw Chic. We have fight review and preview, Ask Mario, and final flurries. But we want to let you know this podcast is sponsored by Hustler Casino. Open 24/7 and located just 15 minutes from downtown LA. If you love poker, then head over to Hustler Casino for the new Cash is King poker cash drawings happening every Monday. They're giving away a whopping $1,000 in cash every other hour from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Play at Hustler Casino, located just 15 minutes from downtown LA, if you want to win big.
Round 1.
All right, round number 1.
Ding, ding.
And folks, this is about stuff that happened in the middle of the week. Saul Canelo Alvarez, his dance card for 2025 has been etched out. And Mario, Wednesday night, everyone in boxing, from the reporters, the people on Twitter, the people in the industry, even people that went on the record like Eddie Hearn, they were stating that Saul Alvarez, the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world, would be facing Jake Paul. And then it was also reported, I believe, by Mike Coffinger in Ring Magazine, that Terrence Crawford, those talks against Canelo had kind of been suspended, and maybe they would be looking at a Boots Ennis fight. But then come Thursday night, when it was all said and done, Turkey Outlaw Chic had signed Canelo to a 4-fight deal with the Riyadh season beginning on May 3rd. So this is going to be the itinerary. It'll be Canelo against William Skull for the IBF title. And then should he win, and I think he will, he's going to take on Terrence Crawford, who's going to sit out all the way till September. Mario, your reaction?
Well, it was a roller coaster of emotions. We were going back and forth, texting each other, and I'd call you and say, is this real? We didn't know what was real.
For a while it was.
For a while. Was it, though? Look, it's no question in my mind that Canelo versus Jake Paul not happening is good.
You were against it. You didn't like it at all.
For the very little integrity that is left in boxing.
In boxing. What?
I did not like it at all.
You
know why? I didn't want... I would have been a little disappointed in Canelo.
But I thought you loved the big events. I thought you said whatever advances boxing you thought was good.
I like circuses, but the circuses...
What is this?
The circuses have to be... You have to have your opponents on that same level. I feel like Canelo was lowering himself to that. Now, look, he's at the point in his career where my guy can just cash checks however he wants. He's proven himself. His legacy is secured. He's one of the all-time greats. I guess economically it would make sense considering all the business it generated with Tyson, right? But Tyson was like almost a 60-year-old guy, former great, but long in the tooth, all that, right? And I didn't really like that, but I kind of got it, right? The novelty. You're talking about a guy who's the face of the sport right now, facing Jake Paul, who I give credit, if he could have pulled off going from Iron Mike to Canelo, that would have been a major coup, and Netflix probably would have really been excited and been blown away. But thank God they're not going to Netflix and chill. Thank God that he finessed him and just used him as a negotiating tactic, which I absolutely love that he got played. And Jake Paul, so embarrassed, upset, doing his little videos. And I love when Canelo tells you off in English. That's my favorite. When he was telling him, it was the best. He's not fighting any YouTubers. So my guy got finessed. My guy got played. Very smart, whoever he had negotiating his deal. And I can't even imagine what the final numbers are that he negotiated that 4-fight deal with His Excellency. But everyone seems to be very, very happy. And I can't believe it was a bit of a travesty that these casuals and these guys that don't know what they're talking about are debating whether he should fight him and if it's good for the sport or not. No, I don't think so. Look, if it was like Jake Paul versus Connor, who's already sort of retired. Okay, I'm down for that. Or name that guy that's no longer, you understand? Like something like that, I'm down for it, but not someone like right in the mix. Would it have been an easy fight for Canelo and safe to face Crawford? Absolutely. Would I like to see him take him out? Absolutely. But I didn't want to see him lower himself, and nor that I don't think Canelo wanted to give him that sort of payday. Be that as it may, I kind of laughed at the end of the day when I say, again, he sort of finessed him and used him as a negotiating ploy. I'm really excited about this 4-fight stretch. With that said, I don't even know if William Skull is a household name in his own house.
Those are famous words from Burt Sugar.
Yeah.
And Mario, do you remember when Bernard Hopkins and Oscar De La Hoya in 2004 co-headlined a card as a prelude to their showdown that
Yes.
September?
He fought Felix Sturm.
Right. This guy
I was there.
is no Felix Sturm. Okay, he makes Felix Sturm look like Ray Robinson. Felix Sturm was actually a guy that was pretty good that no one knew of.
Right.
William
He's a champion.
Skull, in my view, is he 100-1 underdog? No, he's about 1,000-1. He has absolutely no shot. In fact, I believe a perfect scenario would have been Canelo to fight someone else, and for Crawford to dip his toe at 168 against Skull, so then he comes in with the belt. But again, Crawford's made it very clear throughout this whole process and talking to some people, he's going to sit out and get his body up to 168. That's what he's working on right now.
He recently posted a pic of him weighing 186. I didn't think he got that heavy. And I've never seen Crawford in between fights look soft or doughy. So maybe he's hitting that weight. He got that creatine going or whatever it is. But 186 is up there. Look, I feel more confident than ever about Canelo now with his chances against Crawford. He's going to be more active. He's going to have a fight in May. We've always said activity matters.
It'll be a 13-month layoff for Terrence Crawford.
And it's his first fight at this weight class and going up 2 weight classes. We had a very competitive fight. I don't care what everyone says. A very competitive fight against Madrimov. So I really like his chances. You know, I love me some Crawford.
You're a big fan. You're a big fan.
A big fan. I like that he's going to get this big payday. But realistically, if we're looking at calling what's what, it doesn't bode well with everything leading up.
You know what I wanted for Crawford?
Don't you agree, by the way?
Well, you know what I wanted for Crawford? To have some of the things go in his favor. When they were proposing the Jake Paul fight, I said, you know what? As long as that's in conjunction with a Crawford fight and not in place of, if I'm Terrence Crawford,
You want that fight?
what Canelo does in May does not impact me. In fact, I want him to fight Steve Kim because I don't want to get my lottery ticket ripped up.
You're not going to get that ripped up. He would have to fight at some catch weight. He would go up. Then he'd have to come back down.
That's the thing.
That's tough.
Now, if you're fighting,
that'd be more taxing on his body.
Now, let's
Yes.
say Canelo said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get $100 million on Netflix, but I have to go up to 185. If I'm Crawford, I'm thinking, you know what, buddy? Go ahead and go up to 185 and come right down to 68.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much of a difference that makes, but we're talking about incremental differences. But Mario, I'm a little bit surprised you're going all Kennesaw Judge Landis, sticking up for the sanctity of the game. Wow.
I always stick up for the sanctity of the game.
Oh, really?
I like events and I like circuses when they're on sort of even playing fields. You know what I mean? Like we were talking
Time
the other
and place.
day.
Time and place
Yeah, we were
matter.
talking the other day, speaking of a circus, James Harrison and Ocho Cinco fighting,
That's
right?
even.
That's even.
Kind
That's
of,
even.
kind
Even though
of.
one's heavy.
Yeah.
If it was boxing, it's even.
Yes.
If it was boxing, it's even. So that sort of circus I like. When you're going to take a guy, our most revered guy, and I'm like, come on, man.
In his physical prime
Yes,
still.
you know, I didn't like it.
I have a question.
Maybe I'm old school.
In my estimation, though, am I wrong, though? That if you want to make Canelo's fight bigger, moving ahead to September, don't
Ironically-
you think fighting Jake Paul would actually help Terrence Crawford if you're getting part of that pay-per-view upside? There's a residual effect.
Ironically, yes. Yes. However, I do think Canelo's got a lot of pride. And I think he is also a historian and doesn't want that on his ledger at all. Just doesn't want that sort of on. Maybe at the very, very
the
tail end. At the tail end. But he's not at the tail end. After these 4 fights, and if he's feeling, maybe perhaps. Okay, whatever. But I don't think at this point, he certainly doesn't need it, but I don't think he even wants it.
My old buddy at ESPN, Mike Coppinger, had a 30-minute sit-down with Turki Al-Sheikh, and Turki basically said he impressed upon Canelo, and Canelo stated this back to him. He goes, you know what, I really don't want to do that fight. He goes, I want to do a real fight. So that 3-fight deal became a 4-fight deal, and instead of starting in September, It's starting in May, and I'm still with you,
Cinco
though.
de Mayo in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, hola.
Hey,
Órale.
you can go to my girl's Mexican restaurant. Remember the one I told you? My girl has a Mexican restaurant.
but I really think William Skull provides no resistance whatsoever. I'm talking literally 1,000 to 1.
He's not a tomato can, though. But at the same time, well, according to his record, he's not exactly a tomato can. Look, do I think he's a live dog? Not necessarily. But those are still live shots coming back at you. And I think I like it for Canelo in preparation of Crawford. Keeps him sharp, keeps him active. He's going in there. He's going to go in there with all the right momentum.
I'll make a prediction right now. You know how Canelo has not scored a stoppage in about 3 years? May 3rd, there will be a TKO or a KO next to his ledger on the box rec. I think he gets rid of them within 4 or 5 rounds. And then we look ahead to the showdown in September. Folks, it's going to happen. Canelo Alvarez will be taking on Terrence Crawford in September as part of a 4-fight deal with Riyadh season.
And that's in Vegas for being reported, correct?
According, yes.
Yes, Allegiant Stadium. That's going to be
Well,
great.
we don't know about that. UNLV has a game, it turns out, that day.
Oh, does it
Yeah.
really? Well, that's
Yeah.
okay.
We'll find some other place.
We can go T-Mobile. Your boy Shaquille O'Neal.
Now what?
Was recently asked. He predicts Crawford knocks out Canelo. I'm like, my guy's got to stick to basketball. A true prediction.
Okay, Sean Porter is also on board with that.
He thinks Crawford's going to knock out Canelo?
A bread man, Stephen Edwards, seems to think that Crawford has a great shot.
Bro.
There seems to be something in common. I'm just telling. I'm going to say right now, based on the way the Tim Bradley video that we put up on Instagram is doing. Now, we've done some videos that have gotten decent numbers. Tim Bradley should get 2% of this promotion because that video has gone absolutely viral. Every day I wake up to about 7 or 8 new comments, and throughout the day, you get a lot of people.
This is not just me being biased because I'm Mexican. But bro, I saw Canelo take shots from a prime, incredibly powerful Triple G. Boom! Right on the chin. My guy did not ever get dropped or much less get stopped. From a big Kovalev as well. Yeah. Same thing. And you're telling me that Crawford, who's jumping up these weight classes, is going to be able to knock him out? I'm sorry. I just don't see it. I think the odds will reflect that. When the odds come out, the numbers will favor Canelo Alvarez. I believe probably 2.5, 3 to 1. And it'll be interesting to see what betting trends. But look, say what you want. In boxing, it's one of the last sports, they use cultural and racial differences to stoke the fires. Will this fight draw, in my view? Will it do close to 1 million pay-per-view buys? Based on the fact that it's Canelo, based on the fact there's Crawford, who brings in his own audience and his own set of accolades and the type of skills that he has, and the fact you have guys like Tim Bradley, Sean Porter, Stephen Breadman Edwards that I respect, all saying, and Andre Ward will probably be on one side. You're going, ooh. So this thing's going to become like this cultural battle. I hope it doesn't get ugly. I think it's going to be a box office bonanza. I really do. And the sport needs it. I'm so happy it's happening on one of the big holidays.
Right, and for those complaining, it's going to be in the U.S., so I don't want to hear this other stuff. All right, anyway.
No, I'm fired up.
We'll be back. More of the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino.
Catch it streaming live right on YouTube.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
$1.2 million.
And I'm losing in this fucking game. What the fuck?
There's a 400K flip. If I win by way, you get 10 grand.
Compromise fucking straddle!
For my fans!
What? I read it twice!
Wow. All in a call.
I'm not fucking leaving!
Raise it up.
And we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino. Folks, are you looking to get involved with the 3 Knockdown Rule and sponsor our show? We have some spots available. Please email us at info@boxbid.io. Once again, that's info@boxbid.io. Boxbid is an online platform that helps professional boxers connect with their fans by providing exclusive Fight Week merchandise, memorabilia, and sponsorships. You can even buy a shout-out on Boxbid. Boxbid.io handles our sponsorships, and we are proudly working with Boxbid.io.
Review preview.
All right. This past Saturday on The Zone from the Co-op Live Arena from Manchester, England, they called it The Last Dance. And Derek Chisora pounds out a methodical, hard-nosed 12-round decision over Otto Wallin, scoring a couple of knockdowns. And we're thinking, what a great way to end it. What a great way to end it. It's been a long, meritorious career. I'm thinking, okay, now we're going to listen to the speech as he walks off into the sunset. And Mario, what does he do? He starts polling the audience. Who do you want me to fight next? And I'm thinking, bro, what are you, the Rolling Stones? I mean, how many final concert tours are too short? There was a period of about 3 years, final concert for Too Short. And next thing you know, then he launches another tour 2 years later.
Dude, the Rolling Stones have been doing that for decades.
Right, the Eagles. How many final performances did the Eagles... When does this end?
Well,
when?
It usually ends when
badly.
It ends badly in the ring. It's tough to retire when you get your hand raised because they feel one more payday coming, and it's tough to walk away.
When I look at Derek Chisora, his nickname is War because that's what he gives you, but he's also an old war horse. He has a classic old school record. 36-13, 23 knockouts, gives you an honest fight.
That, like Spider Rico.
Yeah, everything is blood and guts. He leaves it out in the ring. It's a fighter's fighter, such an admirable guy. But as I like to say, a Kimism, boxing does not give you gold watches for retirement.
Gives you beatings.
It gives you beatings. And I'm like, when? And then the guys he's calling out, some of them are pretty good. It ain't Jake Paul. Now, maybe if Jake Paul says, you know what? Maybe I'll go up to heavyweight.
You know who did call out Jake Paul? Since last thing I'll think, and I would love to see that fight, Andy Ruiz, and I would love to see that. They're about that. He was about the same size this last time. He won't. He's not going to answer that.
No,
really.
He won't.
I would love that. God, I hope he takes advantage of that.
Yeah, and look, Derek Chisora still has heavy hands, but when you see him, I see a guy that could fight about 30 seconds of each round. Still has heavy hands, still knows how to move in there, but every time he fights now, you look at just the way he looks, the facial damage, you're like, man, you're really kind of running into it. He's 41 years old. That's the other thing, and it's an old 41 based on the hard miles. I have a lot of admiration for him. I just, again, though, when you call something The Last Dance, and they showed this scene of him going into the arena with tears in his eyes, you're like, oh, my God. And then he pulls this.
It's the last, what? The remix.
It was The Last Dance for January of 2000 or February of 2025. Mario, we have some boxing on the docket the upcoming week. Friday night on ESPN from the theater at Madison Square Garden, Keyshawn Davis, bright young contender, goes for his first title against Denis Baranchyk. Also on the card, Xander Zayas takes on Vito Melnicki, and then Abdullah Mason got decked twice in his last fight. He returns in 2025. Mario Baranchyk's a tough, hard-nosed guy. He beat Navarrete last year in San Diego. In my view, though, Davis is a cut above. We're talking about a blue chip elite prospect. Everyone told me 4 years ago from our last Olympic team that went to Tokyo in 2021, they said, that's the guy. The last fight, when he fought a guy that came in 5-6 pounds over, the way he blew him out of there in Norfolk, he showed me something. I like Davis to win this fight here.
Well, he's in against a tough guy that's going to bring the fight. So he might have to deal with some adversity. But, yeah, I think you have to lean towards him. Again, I don't know why on X and stuff, all these guys start sort of picking fights with each other. There was some beef with him and Emiliano Vargas recently, too.
Yeah. And then Emiliano, I love it when they do this. Bro, I make more endorsements than, oh, God, okay, God, we're doing that again.
Wait, but where's the genesis for all these fights?
Well, they're in the same weight class, and they're both with top rank. They've probably seen each other at cards. I think they barked at each other before.
Okay.
But I will say this. I like the fact that they're barking. Because hopefully the barking leads to biting in actual fights, because that's what we need. We need some rivalries.
Right.
One guy that Keyshawn says he'll never face because they're quote-unquote like brothers is Shakur Stevenson. So I guess
convenient.
Yeah, how very convenient, right. Also, Saturday night on The Zone, they have a day-night doubleheader. First, from Manchester, England, on The Zone, Jack Catterall takes on Arnold Barboza. The winner is supposed to get the WBO junior welterweight title. It's Teofimo Lopez. Mario, what's going on with Teofimo? I don't get it.
First of all, that's a good fight.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that fight. We'll see what happens when that's all said and done. Dude, you know how frustrated I get about Teofimo? Because
That's your guy. That's your nephew.
He's such a talent. And it's like that movie Bronx Tale. There's nothing worse than wasted talent. And I feel like this time you have such a finite window It's just closing and closing, and it's
You
gonna
never get the time back.
You never get the time back, and you're just going to wonder what if.
And
I wish these young guys would realize there is no what if. Time goes by, life will.
It's over.
It's it. It will move right past you. I really hope that he does face the winner of Barboza Catterall. I'd like to see him fight prior
before
to that.
How about this? Do the fight with Richardson Hitchens for the unification at 140.
Speaking of Teofimo, last we saw he was training with Reynoso.
Right. I think isn't
Canelo's
everybody training with Reynoso?
Well, then I see Ryan Garcia says he's training with Reynoso, and their potential opponents. Do you know any truth to that? Are they?
They both seem to be there.
Both training there?
They both seem to be there.
Both those fools are training there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably not at the same time.
Well, here's another thing. Ryan's fight's coming up is at welterweight, right?
Yeah.
I think Teofimo might be one of his last fights at junior welter. I think he's bursting at the seams right there as well. So maybe that'll help for a little bit. But that's interesting to see if they both sit. I like both of them. It bodes well for both of those fighters.
I was told 2 weeks ago, look, he made a deal, multi-fight pact with Riyadh Season and Turkey Al-Sheikh, starting with Richardson Hitchens for the unification at 140. Last week, I see these two guys, and look, I'm not placing the blame on Hitchinson
I saw that too,
because he's thinking, look, I want your belt. I know I don't have the leverage. Let me get Teo in the ring. Next thing you know, they're barking over Twitter about, you send the contract. No, you send the contract. No, you send the contract. And I'm like, what is going on? No, you hang up. No, you hang up. I mean, what is going on here?
Well, wait, aren't the adults in the room handling this?
Teo is now actually under new management with Keith Conley. He's no longer with David McWater, and Keith Conley has a reputation of being difficult on promoters. My understanding was a couple of weeks ago, Turkey, Teo, and Top Rank, they were all in accord. We're going to move together on this deal. Well, I think things have hit a snag. Let's just put it that way. And now, Saturday, from the Honda Center in Anaheim, it was supposed to be brought to you by Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar Duarte against Regis Prograis. But no, that Buzzkill Central, Prograis busted his shoulder. It'll be Miguel Madueño. Eric Gomez talked to him late last week. He says that Regis Prograis, if he's healthy down the line, they would certainly think about using him again. Madueño is not a bad late replacement. He's going to be right there in the pocket. He's not hard to find. Neither guy's going to need MapQuest. So you know what? Look, it beats not having a fight. Also on this card, very talented guy by the name of Joel Irarte that we're high on. He will be on that show. So the show must go on, and that will also be on the Zone. Moving on to the Ask Mario segment of the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino. Here's a question from an old friend, Derek B. Hey, Stephen Mario, who would Benavidez have a better chance of defeating? Beterbiev or Bivol? I personally feel Beterbiev would be more dangerous stylistically for the monster. What says you?
It's interesting because if it's the same Beterbiev we've seen and there's no decline, then yes, I don't favor anyone over Beterbiev when he's peaking in all his powers. He's 40 now. He's about 40 now.
Yeah.
Clean living, though. But if he were to slow down a little bit, then maybe. But at the same time, a Bivol,
movement.
The movement, I think, would give him problems, too. I think if Beterbiev were to slow down, that's a big if. I think maybe he'd have a better shot with Beterbiev. But I think the movement with Bivol gives him a lot of problems, too. And Bivol doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. I'm going to be interested. I'll let you know after this
February
next fight.
22nd.
I'll let you know after this next fight.
Well, this is what I call the 50.
Both tough, both difficult.
I think it's 51-49. I don't think there's a definitive answer. Look, one guy's a sledgehammer. We know who that is better. But one guy's the scalpel. They cut you up and beat you up in different ways. And
the thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the thing about with Beterbiev, too, it's not like Benavidez is exactly fleet of foot. He stands right in front of you.
Not hard to find.
He's not hard to find with those heavy-ass hands.
And maybe from David's standpoint, hey, I've sparred with Bivol many rounds. I'm familiar with that. But I've always thought that Beterbiev is one of those guys, you don't know how hard he hits till he touches you, and you're like, ooh, I'm not prepared for this.
No, exactly. You're not prepared for that. What about any truth to the rumor that Benavidez was considering going up to fight Zurdo for cruiserweight title? I've seen those guys spar at Brickhouse.
Yes, there has been conjecture. And I spoke to Eric Gomez last week, And he said, Steve, we'd love to do that fight, but as of now, there has not been a phone call from the other side. Keep this in mind. Zurdo Ramirez has to take care of his WBA mandatory against Dorticos. The 2 dates that I'm hearing for that are going to be April 19th and the 26th. So
not Opataya?
Not Opataya yet. And now you have to gauge this. If you're Zurdo Ramirez and it comes to Opataya for the undisputed crown at cruiserweight or Benavidez, is it strictly a money decision in your view?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it always comes down to that.
I actually think Opataya is a tougher style. He's a bigger guy, and he's southpaw, and he can move. Benavidez is the smaller guy moving up in weight that's going to keep coming towards you.
Mm-hmm.
I asked Julian Chua, who will bring in studio one of these days, I said, who do you like? He said, Steve, either guy is tough, but if it was up to my discretion on who I think we'd have a slightly easier time with, I'm inclined to think that it would be Benavidez. But again, another 51-49 scenario. Here's one from Reaganomics Lamborghini. Perfect world. What would your 3 fights for Canelo look after a scheduled match against William Skull? So one of them's going to be Crawford. Give me your other 2.
Crawford, and then, okay. This is assuming. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else at 68 that I want him to face before going out. Because then, of course, you want to see him face Benavidez.
That'd be one of them. That's the easiest one.
Yeah, so that's 2. And then, do you want to see him against Bivol again? I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, I have an idea.
Who?
We just brought him up. If he wants to win another major belt in another division, Zurdo.
You think he goes up to 200?
Why not?
Canelo?
He's actually talked about it. 3 years ago, he talked about going up to cruiserweight.
I know, but that's a lot of weight, bro. He's not that tall. He doesn't look like a cinder block.
He has
That's
talked.
not that
He has talked about it.
Yeah,
though.
I
That's
know.
all I'm
That
saying.
might be. Well, depending on if he wants to wait another. Yeah. You know who I think no one talks about, and I still think he's dangerous, and I would love to see even Crawford fight him before. And the poor guy doesn't get any love, incredibly avoided. Is Janibek? I think Janibek is.
Janibek's got to get going. Can you even tell me the last time he fought?
No,
you
I know,
can't.
but every time I know, but I think he goes up to 68. I think he'll even be more impressive.
Janibek is going to be headlining a card in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's not exactly fighting Antoine Heckles or Thomas Tate. It's a very unknown opponent. My hope is that he's able, or Turkey's able, to entice one of the other champions. Maybe if our guy Hamza Shiraz beats Carlos
That's
Adamas,
right. There wasn't. That's
maybe
right.
now the winner.
I'd love to see that
the
for
winner
Hamza.
of that unification bout, I think, is in prime position to make some real money moving up to 168. So let's see how.
Funes would love that.
So
yeah.
as Larry Merchant likes to say, fights make fights. Here's one from Jose Sanchez. Mario, when is the love interest in this Christmas movie is going to be Latina? Because representation matters. Yeah, Mario.
I've had a Latino love interest.
Really?
In Holiday in Santa Fe, yes.
What year is that?
That was like 2 years ago.
You have to check that out. All right, here's one from Glitter Road, Clay Stevenson. Fantasy fight for you. Who wins between Danny Swift Garcia and Miguel Angel Gonzalez? There's a blast from the past.
It's a random matchup right there. I think Danny in his prime with that cleanup left hook might actually get it done. He seems a little twitchier for me.
I like the all-around skills of Miguel Angel Gonzalez, who, by the way, was trained for most of his prime by Abel Sanchez. He was 41-0, had some really good victories, and then he faced Oscar De La Hoya at the Thomas and Mack at the beginning of his 1997.
I was at that fight, and I remember what Oscar did to him. That's why.
The first 7 rounds, Oscar looked the best I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
But then Miguel Angel Gonzalez had a pretty good last third of the fight, started landing right hands. I've always said if Oscar sticks with Professor Rivero, I don't know if he loses for the first 50 fights of his career. Kept making changes in the corner, but that's a tough fight. You know what? You're right, though. Swift had the eraser, though.
He did. That's twitchy, and he could get himself out of trouble. And even when Amir Khan was having his moments, boom, he went in his prime.
I think I would still slightly favor Gonzalez, but it's a real fight. Here's one from David. Mario, Ari Emanuel, CEO of TKO, which is UFC plus WWE, made cryptic comments this week about the Ollie Act in boxing. Rumors have started that Dana will call in a favor from Trump that if Dana /TKO /Turkey could get rid of the act and enter boxing as very powerful promoters, would you support it?
Yes.
I would. Why wouldn't I?
Absolutely support it. The more the merrier. And I think they would bring new energy and, more importantly, a lot of money to the table, and I think it'd be better for the sport. Look, Turkey has got all the golden purse strings right now. He's like Kaiser Soze, but you can see him. And is essentially controlling all these, making all the big moves right here. And I love that he's passionate. Dana's he's a boxing guy first. Many people think he's just all MMA, but he got into that sort of by default. He was a boxing
boxing trainer. Didn't he work at a gym and he was training people?
He was in Boston. He was a boxing guy. No, he's a total boxing guy. We're always sending each other boxing videos and stuff. So he loves it. So I know he always wants to do it. It's just what makes UFC so great is he monopolized the sport to where we get Crawford, Canelo,
Crawford Spence three times.
Crawford Spence every week.
Right.
Pretty much we get him every week. And number one is facing number two. The turnover of the champions is so quick because the best are fighting the best.
And they all fight more than once or twice a year.
You're exactly right.
In terms of the Ali Act, look, the Ali Act was created by John McCain in the mid-'90s to protect fighters. In other words, to make sure that they don't get pennies on the dollar in terms of the overall revenue. Mm-hmm. So we certainly understand and are sensitive to the fact that fighters should be protected financially. But I want to point this out. If you have a good manager, that really is not that much of an issue, that knows what they're doing. Also, with what Turki Al-Sheikh is paying, I don't think there's been a single fighter that I know of that comes away thinking, man, I got shorted.
No.
He actually overpays guys. Now, look, is the money coming down a little bit? I've heard it has the last year, so there's a bit of a market correction. But if you actually look at some of the fights that they're making and what they're paying, I don't think anyone's asking for an Ali Act invoice. No. They're all happy with what they're getting paid. And by the way, the best thing that he's doing, Turki Al-Sheikh, is that if you give an honest effort in losing, he'll bring you right back. He doesn't relegate you to the sideline for 18 months. Okay, so I think, look, get some infrastructure, create activity, make the fights. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here in this whole process.
I agree.
Here's one from Christian. As a boxing fan, would you just prefer Canelo to vacate the belts and go do whatever circus nonsense he wants to do? Let's see these other 168-pounders fight for belts. P.S. Canelo Crawford is going to be a snoozer in another big fight that doesn't live up to the hype.
Well, history shows that Crawford's not a guy that runs and he stands in there.
He tries to win, actually.
And he tries to win, so I hope that's not the case. I hope that it's not a snoozer and Crawford is his typical self. Now, granted, he's never been hit like someone by Canelo before, so we'll see after he does take that first shot. He might bite down on that ninth piece and let's just throw down. And here we are, which I hope is the case. Why would Canelo have to vacate the belts? Yeah, I don't think he's like.
Well, I think it's do whatever you want. Look, my view is this: once you become the undisputed champion by taking off all 4 belts, instead of getting stuck with these bad mandatories that come in at the worst times, I would just vacate every belt and become the ring champion. And then here's the problem, though. Then you have to have a champion with some honor that says, I'm going to actually consistently take on the best guys. See, I've seen situations where people say, well, I'm the linear champion and I'm going to fight Steve Kim. And people say, how can you do that? Well, what are you going to do? Strip me? I'm the linear champion. See, that's the fine line that you have. I remember when Margarito wanted Mayweather and he didn't want to fight him at all. Mayweather saying, well, Baldomir's a linear champion. Let me go. And I'm like, I didn't want to see Baldomir. I wanted to see Margarito.
Right.
Now, my view is this.
I remember that. They offered him $8 million.
$8 million, and that was in 2007.
That's a lot of money.
So my view is that once you become undisputed, I would actually free up at least a couple of belts. You know why? Let a couple of other guys win that belt, and if there's a guy that makes like 7, 8 title defenses of the belt that I vacated and becomes something, well, all of a sudden, now you become my number 1 contender, and I could face you on my terms when it's truly a big fight.
What has history shown? Did Marvin Hagler do that?
No, but there was only 2 belts, BABC and then IBF, and then he kind of retired. But it wasn't as bad. But what happens when a guy wins 4 belts? Invariably, one of these sanctioning bodies says, hey, you got to do a mandatory in 2 weeks. And the guy's like, oh, God, then what?
Exactly.
And here's the other thing. If you are a contender, let's say you're the 5th best guy in a division, you want one of these belts to be vacated. Because you know why? Because if a champion's only going to fight twice a year and you're ranked number 5, you're thinking, wait a minute, I may not get a fight against that champion for 2.5 years. Tell me how that's good for anybody.
It's not.
You really can't.
Final flurries.
All right, moving on to final flurries. Mario, what a fine Italian feast I had at your house on Saturday. Kudos to the ladies.
How good was that?
Wow.
I woke up the next day full. I
man.
ate so much. Yeah, my wife and the aunt, the mom, the friend.
They did a hell of a job.
All the Italian ladies from Pittsburgh, they got down. Wasn't that
They
good?
did a
Homemade?
hell of a job. The sausage, the
So
pasta,
sausage was
oh, the
good.
chicken.
The eggplant with
the
the cheese.
eggplant. Oh,
and
my
the whole
God.
thing.
They did a
Isn't
hell of
that
a job. A little
good?
glass of wine there,
Yes,
too.
we had a couple glasses of wine and we had some tequila afterwards right there. Yeah, there was no boxing, ironically, but we did watch a UFC card. It was a more, not as action-packed UFC card, but good nonetheless. Coming from Australia, where we saw Dricus du Plessis defend his title against Sean Strickland, who, it was close, right? Until the nose was broken. And then at that point, they started to pull away.
There were close rounds that were being won by Duplessis, but as soon as the nose started to leak, here's the issue with Strickland. He was like that car that was in the middle of the freeway, and you're thinking, okay, you're going to have to get out of third gear here. He just stuck at 55 now. Strickland has very good eyes, a good reaction, defends himself real well. But every round, I kept thinking, you have to do a little bit more. I thought he might have won the third. First 2 rounds were close. I get the sense most people gave it to the other guy. Round 4, busted his nose, and you felt like you need a knockout in round 5.
Exactly.
Didn't get it.
Didn't get it. Du Plessis, to his credit, super strong. That dude balloons up. He's got a motor on him, really well conditioned. He's awkward. One of those guys awkward to his benefit and stuff. So we'll see. He might be fighting Hamzat Chimaev, the guy from Chechnya, the wrestler. So that should be a good one. So yeah, some good cards coming up.
And Mario, the Super Bowl, America's team, Philly. Good job, guys. Good job, guys.
Man, I'm so happy they blew him out too. Hopefully that kind of puts a good taste in everyone else's mouth, and that this dynasty is not just going to run the tables. I know my Chargers are going to be fired up. I if they pick up a couple good receivers, I think they have a good shot. They'll be on their way, don't you think, Kim?
They do need a receiver. And there's going to come a point in time that Justin Herbert's going to actually have to play well late in games. I know me and you argue about it. I don't think he's a great clutch player. I don't.
Oh, come on. He's got more 4th and 17, 4th and completions in these last few years. It's just the last 2 games. That's it. They used to say the same about Lamar Jackson. And look, he played well. He ended up playing well.
Yeah, well, Lamar also has a couple of MVPs. Look, I am glad for one reason. When I looked at this year's Chiefs team, I know they won 15 games, but they won a lot of close games.
Yeah.
They didn't blow out a lot of people. Then they look at the officiating, and I look at the history of the National Football League, the teams that have won 3 straight. There's only been one major team, Green Bay Packers. 60s Lombardi.
Wow, imagine the 60s.
Yeah,
wow.
65, 66, 67. So look at the teams that couldn't do it after winning back-to-back. The Steelers couldn't do it. The Cowboys with Jimmy Johnson couldn't do it. Patriots could never do it. The Niners of the late 80s couldn't do it. And I just kept thinking, I think it'd be a miscarriage of justice in history that if this team somehow does it, look, I'm not someone that hates the Chiefs, but I was beginning to. That was a satisfying game to watch.
It was very sad because all the favoritism. And in the beginning, I thought, because there was
the
a questionable
first call.
calls.
The A.J. Brown call. You're like, oh, my God,
here we go. And then that defense was incredible.
Oh, that was unbelievable. Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat dominated. Did any commercials
on my show, right? I already saw the commercials.
Oh, okay.
On my show, Access Hollywood, we saw all the commercials. The great thing is I used to be able to you anticipated watching the commercials for the first time. Now I saw them all. Been there, done that. They're all in it. So the Elon commercials never happened.
Yeah,
that was just a vicious
that's what I was
rumor.
waiting for.
So was I. I was like, those are going to be old school. We didn't get to see them. Dang,
I mean, but there's nothing iconic like what that. They don't even do that anymore.
No.
The one commercial that pissed me off was that football commercial where the girl is schooling Brad. I'm like, okay, there's no girls going to play football. Get out of here with that.
I don't think I saw that one.
You didn't see that one? Oh, lucky you. Would you like the halftime show at all?
So I like Kendrick Lamar. And I'm actually going to Wisconsin with my daughter's a big fan of SZA. So we're going, and I like some of his songs. But I think there's a difference between being a really talented artist and like a radio artist and like an entertainer. I felt like because he's just, he's a rapper. So you need to have a lot going on around him. I thought there wasn't as much going on. So, it was fine. But some people I know really hated it. And some people really loved it. I thought it was cool and it had moments, but I thought it could have been so much more. They could have done so much more as a production.
Okay, I was kind of lukewarm on it. I was in the restroom, so I missed it.
So you were literally lukewarm.
Yeah, I was literally lukewarm. I cleaned out the pipes.
I think it was there.
It was there. I mean, was it Michael Jackson in 1993 at the Rose Bowl? Was it Prince in 2007 in a rainy Miami? No.
No, it wasn't even Bruno Mars. And
what year was he?
Bruno Mars did it a couple times. Well, it was funny
did?
because Bruno Mars and Beyonce were guest performers for Coldplay. No one even thinks about Coldplay. Everybody thinks it was their. It was actually Coldplay, but they were the guest, and they put on an awesome show. They were awesome.
All right.
That's
So
one of my
anyway, we'll
favorites right
have a
there.
lot to talk about. And next week, not only will we review the stuff on ESPN in the Zone, I believe we are going to be previewing that Super Bowl level card February 22nd.
Well, that's a good one.
There's like at least 6 fights worthy of a main event tag, and we're going to be.
Oh, we're gonna
previewing-
watch that together at Hustler now.
Well, that's not. Well, okay, well, you've ruined the.
Did I ruin it?
Well,
Did
you
I
know
ruin
what?
it? I didn't know it was a secret.
It's a teaser.
You got to tell me if it's a secret. I didn't know it was a secret.
We will make the official announcement next week.
Okay, maybe we'll do that.
Shoring up the details. Shoring up the
all right,
details.
all right.
All right. So on behalf of Mario Lopez, Smokinton Frazier, and Tino on the edits, this has been the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino.